Hello, it's Father Norm again. We all know the obvious. It's been about 1 year since we first dealt with this dread virus and with everything that's happened in the last year coming forth from it. Obviously, understandably, there's been fear, frustration, anger, resentment, negativity, hostility. We could go on and mention all these things, and they're real. At the same time, there have been many people coming forth with great compassion, understanding, sensitivity, going the extra mile, greater prayerfulness. Again, we have a choice, don't we? We have a choice in every circumstance, whatever it is, including a difficult one, how we're going to respond. You've probably heard me say many times before that Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist and who was in a concentration camp in World War II, that he saw what was going on there in the camp. Some people were very bitter, negative, and hostile and fearful, understandably, what they were going through. And yet some people were reaching out and caring for others and doing for them, even though they themselves were hurting and maybe dying in some way physically, but still vital spiritually. That made all the difference. And he's the one who said, and I need to remember it myself and well, and all of us, it's ultimately comes from our Judeo-Christian heritage anyway, or anybody deeply spiritual. He said, we may not be able to choose the circumstances we find ourselves in life, but we can choose the attitude we take toward those circumstances, what we let them do to us, how we see them, how we respond. Very important, including in this last year with the pandemic, and even as we go forward. Because as we go forward, maybe much of this, hopefully, people with the vaccines and everything could put behind us. But we should not put behind us the lessons we need to learn and remember that we have that choice, that we can either live with a sense of solidarity, interdependence, we're all in this together. How do we look out for one another? Or we can go through life again, just caught up in ourselves, measuring everything by how this is affecting me and being upset and negative at whatever's going on that doesn't go my way or help me to achieve my satisfaction for the day. Uh, the interesting thing, when Jesus came to call us out of ourselves to care about others, that was the real cause of joy. If anything, when we lose ourselves in sharing with others and being more attentive of them, we're not caught up in our own hurts, fears, resentments, whatever that is. Really loving and genuinely caring gets us out of that. And we find that we're made for a noble purpose, and we're happiest when we live that purpose. Basically, as Jesus put it, love God with your whole being, love your neighbors yourself. One of the issues that can get in the way, obviously, and has, is deep resentment, even legitimate resentments for what's been happening. But how do we move through them? I just want to use one example. You've heard me say it before, but it sticks with me. And I think sometimes stories, just like the story of the prodigal son that Jesus told, are meant to stick and remind us. For me, as you remember, probably, or maybe you don't know, that I came into the Catholic Church at my freshman year at the University of Akron. And one of the things I did becoming Catholic is go to the sacrament of reconciliation, confession for the first time. Unfortunately, many people today don't use that beautiful sacrament of God's healing grace the way it can be used. And I'd encourage people to do just that. For example, we have the sacrament every Saturday, 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. On the Thursday before first Fridays, we have it then at 3:30 to 4:30. And also, you can make an appointment or you can ask me to come over to church and be anonymous. But again, the beauty and the goodness of the sacrament, here's one clear example of that. When I was becoming Catholic, the priest said, well, okay, you had been baptized earlier. Now you need to go to confession to look deeper in your life, which is what we're called to do during Lent, to take a deeper look, take a deeper stock in our life where we're sinning. Sinning, again, as I've said before, not to grovel in guilt, but to be aware of where we need, probably most of all, healed and forgiven. So for me, when I went to the sacrament for the first time and the priest asked me after I said a few things, is there anybody in my life that I'm not loving as I could? I mentioned my stepfather, who my mom had been separated years before, but he would drink too much and he became emotionally abusive. They separated. We'd see him now and then. They never divorced, but there was still that resentment, that hurt from years ago. And the priest said, "Well, what can you do about that?" And basically, I went on to say how mean my stepfather was, how insensitive, how hurtful. And the priest reminded me, as we all need to be reminded in our own circumstances, hey, this confession isn't looking at him. You have legitimate concerns. There's a time to look at that, but looking at you. What do you need to be about in loving your stepfather? Doesn't mean you have to agree with him, doesn't mean you necessarily have to have warm feelings. At the same time, let go of the resentment and hostility that eating away at you. Again, any moment can be our Lenten experience of fessing up and getting freed up from that kind of hostile resentment. Some people, it eats away at them for a lifetime. So the priest helped me do that. He helped me take a deeper look, try to be more understanding of my stepdad. Again, not condone anything he did, but forgive him, forgive him. And I was able to do that with, first of all, because I was in that sacrament, encouraged, really challenged to do that, and given the grace of the sacrament. For us in the Catholic tradition, yes, God's grace is there every day, but the sacrament's especially a special way. And so in this sacrament, being able to say, Lord, yes, I do forgive my stepdad. Just knowing how much you have forgiven me helps me to better forgive him. I mean, Jesus, you said, Father, forgive, they know not what they do, from the cross. Can I do any less? And again, with your example and with your grace, able to let that go, able to let go of resentment for him. Eventually, my mom and myself, I think we've mentioned this before, when he got very ill in the latter years of his life, we went back and took care of him. And when he was dying, one of the things he said to me, he said, Norm, as he was dying, thank you for loving me. I know I was difficult to love. Wow. So this is Lent, time of reconciliation, a time of confessing not where other people have gone wrong. We can have legitimate angers, but what we need to do. Again, where we need to not only be forgiven, but healed of the hurt that sometimes leads to resentment. Make a decision. Again, opportunity for that sacrament, as I mentioned before, and for those maybe coming out of a different tradition or even other ways, whether we go to the person, go to the Lord in prayer. Free me up, Lord. Free me up from anything about anybody, especially in this last year that I've resented. Help me to forgive and help me to be forgiven. Because what have I done to contribute toward hurt and fear and hostility among us all? Take that quiet moment and see what the Lord may be saying to your heart right here, right now.